A very good morning to you and welcome to the Business Lens on Rapid Television Abuja. It is great to have you with us on this edition. Today is Salah, right? A lot of people are on public holidays and a lot of things have been going on. I think even, trying to find my way to the office this morning, it's been a little bit crazy because I could count the number of people outside. Oh yes, but this is the Business Lens on Rapid TV, and this is where we look at how all the numbers and figures directly affect you and your businesses. My name is Divine Alex. So let's begin with the key business trends that matter right now, starting from the headlines. Now, the global oil prices rebounded on Tuesday after the United States launched fresh strikes in southern Iran, reigniting concerns over Middle East tensions, just as markets were beginning to price in hopes of a possible peace agreement between Washington and Tehran. Now, from that one, we move to another one that took us to an interesting turn, where Nigeria and the World Bank have cancelled about $717.7 million in funding meant for electricity sector reforms, raising fresh concerns over policy coordination, implementation failures, and the future of critical power infrastructure projects amid the country's persistent electricity crisis. I know this one touches everybody. This one raises a lot of eyebrows because people are asking questions. What is going on? If the former power minister comes out to say we need a lot of funding to get the power sector working effectively, and all of a sudden there is a suspension, there is a cancellation of help that is supposed to come from the World Bank to assist us in fixing our power sector, that raises a lot of questions. Now, the next says Nigeria's trade sector contributed nearly 18% of the country's GDP in the first quarter of 2026. This reinforces its position as one of the biggest drivers of economic activity, despite ongoing inflation, FX pressures, and weaker consumer spending. Now, away from that, we move to the next, where Nigeria's aviation industry recorded its first major contraction in nearly 2 years during the first quarter of 2026, as the air transport sector suffered a sharp slowdown that reversed much of the recovery momentum seen in 2025. Now to the next, where retail lending in Nigeria has slowed in January 2026 as tighter banking system, liquidity and cautious lending conditions weighed on credit expansion despite continued growth in consumer and personal loans. Now, away from that story, we head to the next, where the African Development Bank says African countries could save nearly $300 billion annually through more efficient public spending, stronger reforms, while also unlocking trillions of dollars in development financing across the continent. Now, let's head straight into the markets. The Naira strengthened against the US dollar in April 2026, appreciating by 1.42% to close at 1,361.51 Naira per dollar, as aggressive liquidity tightening by the Central Bank of Nigeria helped to stabilize the foreign exchange market. The Apex Bank also injected about 9.71 trillion Naira through open market operations bills, that's the OMO bills, to curb excess liquidity and reduce volatility, with analysts noting that the improved stability is gradually boosting investor confidence in Nigeria's economy despite lingering inflationary pressures. We will look at those stories, have a discussion on the different types of taxes you pay and what it means for your pockets and more. I am Divine Alex. Stay with us. You are welcome back. This is still the Business Lens on Rapid Television Abuja. Now, we're going to be having a conversation on tax. I know a lot of people react differently when the tax conversation comes on. It is one conversation every Nigerian is part of, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Now, this goes from the VAT, which is VAT on everyday purchases, to deductions on salaries, to bank transfer charges. We now have import duties and even taxes that affect online businesses. Now, many Nigerians are paying more attention to to where their money is going and what exactly these taxes mean. And at the same time, government says tax reforms are necessary to increase revenue, to also reduce dependence on oil and grow the economy. But citizens and businesses are asking difficult questions. Are Nigerians already overtaxed? Why do businesses constantly complain about multiple taxation? And if more taxes are being collected, why do many people still feel little impact on infrastructure, on healthcare, on power supply, and public services? So today we are going to be simplifying the conversation. We'll break down the different types of taxes Nigerians pay, who they affect the most, which taxes government relies on heavily, and what the new tax direction could mean for workers, for entrepreneurs, for SMEs, and everyday citizens. And joining me to have today's conversation to break it all down is Carlo Aja, who is a financial analyst. Good morning, Carlo.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, apologies for dragging you here today, but it is going to be a great conversation with you today. That is why we insisted on bringing you here. So let's start from the basics. Before I even start throwing the question, I remember that sometime last week or 2 weeks ago or something. So I wanted to just stop by at a place to check for the prices. They gave me the menu. I went through the list of the things I wanted to order for. And then by the time I not placed an order, I saw that there was a lot of other money attached to it. They now told me, oh, this is 7.5% VAT. And now there is another fee, which is consumption. This is on food. Now, many people do not even realize that these are some of the charges that, is attached to what they are paying. So I want us to start from the basics, because many Nigerians, like I said, hear tax terms and almost every day, and they hear the VAT, they hear the payee, they hear withholding tax, they hear stamp duties from the deductions on their bank apps. They also hear company income tax, but many people still do not fully understand the difference between all of these things. And even the consumption fee, 5% I paid, I didn't even know what the 5% was supposed to be for. Now, can you help simplify the major taxes that Nigerians should know, and who exactly these taxes affect the most?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a wide topic. We'll try our best, right? So let's do it this way. If we have the broad categorizations, we're going to have tax on income, right? There's going to be a tax on consumption. There's going to be a tax on transactions. There's going to be a tax on gains. So let's start from income. So if you're an individual and you make income, so you earn a salary, right? It's going to be taxed under personal income taxes. If you're a corporation, you make a profit, like net profit, gross profit, that's going to be taxed as a corporate income tax. So CIT, corporate, then PIT, personal income taxes. So that's for income. Okay. What about gains, right? If I buy a share certificate, or if I buy a share, and I sell it and I make a profit, I pay a capital gains tax on the gain that I made on that transfer. Okay, so that's gains, right? What about consumption? If you went to the restaurant like you talked about and you consumed, then you pay a VAT, of value added tax. So you saw in your receipt your VAT, which is federal, but then the consumption tax was state. So it's both of them are the same. They're charging you because you consumed, but one was federal and then one was state. Then you have your tax, your stamp duties, or your transactions. You do a transaction, they stamp something or they verify something, that's going to be a stamp duty. So it's basically income, transactions, gains, and then it's federal, state, and local government. So that's the matrix that sort of goes around those taxes. But in simple terms, what most everyone's going to pay going forward is going to be taxes on income and taxes on consumption, which is going to be your personal income taxes, and of course that VAT. The bulk of Nigerians don't do a lot of transactions in the stock market. They might not pay withholding taxes and all, but really the income taxes and the transactional taxes, VAT, that's where you see the bulk of Nigerians fall under.
Okay, thank you for that one. So which of these taxes directly affects ordinary Nigerians daily, even without them realizing it?
It's going to be the VAT, the value added tax, because once you do a transaction and you are consuming, then you are paying that tax. And it's a regressive tax. That means that it doesn't matter if Dangote is buying Gala or I am buying Gala, we both pay the same 7.5% of
Okay.
that transaction, right?
Okay.
But an income tax is based on income, so it's more or less progressive. But VATs are just based on the transaction of the receipt. But that's what we pay really all the time, yeah.
Okay. Now, so why is VAT, often the most visible tax to citizens?
It's pretty easy to collect, right? Before we used to have what's called a sales tax, but VAT is pretty easy to collect because the organization collects or adds it onto your bill, like in the restaurant. So the taxman relies on those organizations to collect those taxes and then remit. So that's really why it's very, very popular around the world. It's very, very easy to do, to calculate, very easy to apply, and it can be applied by the federal, state, and even local governments. Yeah.
Okay, now you talked about the income tax. Now, many salary earners say before their salaries even enter their accounts, deductions have
Mm,
already, reduced. It has begun,
mm,
and what they now take home reduces. Then, when they spend that same money, they still pay VAT and other charges.
mm.
So, why do many Nigerians feel that they are being taxed at almost every level of economic activity?
I think they're kind of right because the whole idea of the government is to tax every level of economic activity and get income from you. But for your income, the gross, the top line is what we call above the line, below the line. When you get your paycheck, right, above the line, the way it's structured now, you have to be very careful how you spend, right? Because you then want to get what we call deductions or deductibles. So wait now, if you earn, say, 1 million naira, you don't get any automatic tax breaks. You only get that 800,000 naira limit, where after that they start to tax you. So if you earn 1 million, then that 200,000 is available to be taxed. If you pay rent, you can apply for rent relief, i.e., on that separate from the 800,000. But when it's not above 800,000, it's going to be fair game to be taxed by the tax authorities.
Okay, so do you think that Nigerians or Nigeria truly overtaxed, compared to other African economies?
Not really, right? So look at it this way, right?
Okay.
Our tax to GDP is very, very low, which means as a whole percentage of the population or of the output of the economy, we're not really paying a lot of personal income taxes or corporate income taxes. But this has to do with compliance and not to do with the rates itself. In terms of the rate itself, corporate is about 30, individuals starting from about 18 or 15, I'm not really sure. It's not the rates per se, but it's the compliance. So what is going to happen with this new tax regime is that from 2027, we'll start to file income taxes under this new tax laws, and there's more compliance that's going to happen because they are going to link your taxes to your NIN, to your phone, to your bank account, so they can have a fair idea of your transactions, and then you can use that to say, hey, if you're transacting this amount of cash, we then maybe expect to see some taxes come through as well. So
Mm.
it's not the rate, but it's more or less we're going to start to pay more and more and more because things are getting more linked electronically, and that's just how we do our transactions.
Okay, now speaking of those new tax laws, what do you think is the bigger issue here? Is it the fact that, we have the rising cost of living that is making the
Mm.
taxes feel heavier? Or do you think that it is because there is not enough public awareness about how those taxes actually work?
I think it's both of them. Both
Okay.
of them. There's a big, big fall in consumption. Folks are struggling. So if you give me 1 million, I have to pay taxes. You're taking away my disposable income. So I'm competing with taxes. Yeah, I either eat or I pay taxes. So that's one, and it's a big thing there. Number two is the education really about this tax reform. There's not been a lot that has been done. There are lots of things that have to happen from now till next year before we start to file that have not yet happened. If you notice, tax talk has basically gone to the back burner. The former Mr. Holiday is now Minister of Finance. I don't see anybody else that is now, as a tax person, out there talking about taxes. So we might be in for a big surprise come January 2027 when we have to file for 2026 fiscal year. And lots of people are going to be asking questions. Why am I filing? And all that. My employer is taking PE. Why should I still pay taxes? So It's not being talked about, but it's a big risk in 2027 that if you don't file properly, you're going to be hit with a big fine. So that's my worry.
Okay, so now can you better explain this filing and paying tax? Because a lot of people still get it confused, even though we've talked about it often. We keep telling them, okay, go and file. It doesn't mean you're paying immediately. It's just like explaining what is happening in your finances and everything. So can you, explain it maybe very well so that anybody who is watching us right now will have a clearer picture of what it means and ways that they can do it so that they can avoid the whole big fine thing, because the big fine thing is also contributing to the confusion around the whole taxes thing.
Yeah, you're quite right. So the way it works is pretty simple. Once you work, once you earn any income, you have to file. It doesn't, when you file, you're telling the tax man, I earned this income. It's
Okay.
in that tax filing that you can then claim your deductibles. So if I earn 500,000 naira a year, the taxman has said if I don't earn up to 800,000, I pay no taxes. But I don't say because I'm earning less than 800, I'm not going to file taxes. You've got to go file, and on that tax filing, you say I earned 500,000. Then you get that tax clearance for that fiscal year. So the taxman will say for the year 2026, you are tax compliant, you are not owing any taxes, and then you keep that basically. So you are done for the year. If you don't do that, there's a section in the law that allows a taxman to say, I presume that you earned 10 million and I want you to come and pay tax on the 10 million. So you filing is a way for you to say, listen, this is what I earn and I want to be cleared for that fiscal year. Filing doesn't mean you pay. As a matter of fact, you can file and your taxes could go up or come down based on if the taxman accepts what you're filing, because you have to file the gross above the line, then you deduct. So if you pay rent, they allow you to take rent out. If you buy health insurance, pension reform, you take that out. So if the taxman agrees to what you've done, fantastic. What you filed is going to be acceptable. They might say, no, you paid too much here, or you didn't pay this, and they might adjust it. So in simple terms, everybody has to file. Everybody. Whether you earn, you don't earn. Like literally, I would say, even if you earn zero, file and say I earned zero, right? But you do not have to all pay taxes. So everybody files, but not everybody pays taxes.
Okay, now let's look at the business side of this. Businesses, they constantly complain about multiple taxation, especially the small, medium enterprises that now they have to battle inflation, the whole issue with the power sector, power supply because of the poor power supply here. Now there's also high logistics costs and foreign exchange pressures that are also affecting some of those SMEs. Now, from federal taxes to state charges, local government levies, many business owners say survival is becoming harder. So, is Nigeria's tax structure discouraging business growth?
Not really. So again, the way the new taxes are structured, I think if you have a turnover of less than 100 million, you don't pay any taxes. So that's a key tax break for the SMEs, the nano SMEs, and all that, and in the country. So if you're just a struggling guy, you do some small business here and there, file, but you will not pay corporate income taxes if you are a corporate. So one way I see people saying is that, listen, if you do business, incorporate that business so that you can claim the expenses used to create that revenues as a tax break. That's the one thing we'll see on the show that everyone should do. So if you bake cupcakes at home and before you bake it, people pay to your account, that's your side gig. Go and incorporate a company so that when you buy the flour, when you pay for the gas to make the cupcakes, you can claim that as a which means you keep more of the income that you're making from that business. So they're really going after the really big, large corporations in this tax reform, not really the SMEs. But what is important for us an SME, like I said in the private side, they can assume a tax number and ask you to pay if you don't file or if you file incorrectly. The key thing is going to be keeping records. You have to keep proper records, proper bank records, proper expense records. I would say do stop using cash if you're a business because cash has no paper trail. If you use a card, use a bank transfer or a check, you can do a paper trail. So your bank account becomes your first way that you can then see what you spent, and then how you can then ask your accountant to do your books of account for you. So stop using cash, hire an accountant. If you can't hire one, come together, hire an accountant to talk to you as a group, learn how to integrate yourself into these tax laws, and make sure you have proper books of account. You can't say because I'm a small business, I'm not going to have books of account. Yeah.
Okay, so towards the end of last year and beginning of 2026, there was this circulation on ground that was talking about the fact that, oh, if you okay, I think I particularly went to shop for a shoe, a pair of shoe, and the seller now told me, oh, write gift on it. And I was asking him, why would you tell me to write gifts? This happened to me directly in one of the markets. Now, the circulation around that time was that, oh, if you use gifts or anything that does not, explain that this is an income, maybe you could be able to avoid some of this. So can you explain what, or maybe the myth and the controversy that people are not understanding around this labeling of transactions on the bank app?
Gotcha. So not all transactions are taxable, right? If you get a gift or an inheritance, right, it's not a taxable income. It's just income, but it's not taxable income. If you get a salary, that's taxable income. So what people are thinking is that if they get income from a business or normal income from maybe a salary, they can write, oh, gift, and then because it's a gift, the taxman will not tax you. I would caution against that, because the way what they're doing today is that they're integrating records. So if you own a shoe shop, right, you imported shoes, there's a record, maybe you went to the bank to send money, a wire to import those shoes, or there's a record that you paid to the custom duty somewhere. When you go to the bank as well, they have your BVN, which is linked to your NIN, which is now going to link to your tax ID. So, and there's AI. If I ask the AI to analyze your account, it can tell me, well, this account is linked to this account, and this does this and does that. The taxman can see what you are doing, right? And if you then say you brought in shoes worth 20 million naira, and then suddenly you are getting gifts from 100 people, 100 people can give you gifts every month. So it now raises a flag. That's when you get audited. That's when the NRC will say, hey, we want to audit you. Let's see what you've done with your transactions. Remember, not every income is taxable, but you've got to keep records. So I would call records and don't try to dodge. The penalties are not worth it. If you make around 100 million, there are legal ways you can reduce your taxes than trying to change the numbers, because you might forget, and they then find you, they can go back 5 years. You might forget you did this a year ago, and it's going to come back and bite you. Remember as well, you've bought that shoe. If you sell that shoe to a corporate, the other corporate is going to use VAT and file that they bought shoe from you, but you are saying it's a gift. It won't match. So they're going to use, hey, VAT came in here because he's claiming VAT on expense from you, but you are saying that what you sold to him was a gift. It wouldn't match. So I would say be very careful. If you just try to keep your books right.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, what other taxes are businesses supposed to watch out for apart from the VAT part? I'm talking about from the business angle.
Yeah, so it's just going to be the corporate income taxes. And it's kind of different. With the individual side, we know our deductions. We know if you pay pensions and life insurance, NHIS, housing fund, we know what is about 5 or so. That's all you can get. For the business, they have a certain way they deduct. It says any expense used to create income can be deducted. So it's really specific to what you are doing. And I give a good example I always use. Davido is a musician. If Davido's company buys him a Lamborghini to use in a music video shoot, Davido can claim that Davido's company can claim that Lamborghini as a cost of doing business, because a musician, the Lamborghini is like a prop and this was bought by the company. But if I go buy a Lamborghini, I can't claim a Lamborghini as a cost of, because I'm not a musician, right? I can't claim that. So it depends on what you are doing. But any expense used wholly to create income is largely going to be tax deductible. And they've also put in a few sweeteners. If you export, the monies that come back into country through approved means it's also tax exempt. If you make money offshore, you bring it back, it's tax exempt. If you're into sports, I think it's agriculture, gets a 5-year tax window. Those are also tax exempt. So the business guys, especially if you make more than 100 million, make sure you are hiring an accountant or a tax person to advise you, because you have a broader reporting structure and due diligence requirements from you. Don't try to do it on your own. Make sure you hire help so they can guide you through that process.
Do not try to do that on your own, and make sure you hire help. Now, do you think that we have system that has excessive taxation for more small businesses, and this could maybe push more businesses into the informal economy?
I would say VAT is just going to be the only one, because VAT applies irrespective of income. So if I'm a small company, I have to still pay VAT, especially if I can't push that VAT to my supplier. Maybe I'm just a small shop or whatever, and I buy goods, I have to pay VAT. And maybe the guys that buy from me are informal and I can't push it to them. That's where I would say that. But overall, if you are making an expense, you can write that off. So that's a big advantage. Like I said, if you were doing any gig in the past and it was a private gig, money's coming to your account, you have to make sure you have got time, go and incorporate that, and make sure that going forward, all the income go to the company. Have a separate bank account for your company. If you have a bank account, open up a personal account, but separate those transactions from your personal transactions. Keep them apart completely. Notate and memorize all transfers coming in, coming out. No cash transactions whatsoever. Use your debit card, checks, or transfers. Separate documents, segment, and silo everything that you want to do. If you keep records, it's easier for an accountant to come and help you. If you have no records, you're really swimming on very thin ice here.
Okay, so now let's talk about the taxes that government depends on heavily. Now, for years, Nigeria relied strongly on oil revenues, but with growing pressure on government finances, there's now more focus on widening the tax net. Now, today, which taxes, generate the strongest revenue for the government?
Yeah, it's still going to be, the way it works out is this: is non-oil and it's corporate income taxes and VAT.
Okay.
So CIT and VAT. But look at it this way, right? The oil revenues generate the dollar revenue. So the oil sector is a very, very small part of our economy, but it generates about 88% of the forex earnings. But the local naira tax sources, which is your corporate income taxes, your VAT, your customs, they generate much, much more, but they're generating naira for the government. So that's where the bulk of the tax returns come from: corporate income taxes and VAT. But for dollar, it's going to be your petroleum taxes that bring in the dollars, and of course the NPA, things like that. So the bulk of the government is coming from, bulk of government revenues is going to come from the corporate income taxes and of course the VAT. That's what they depend on to get the bulk of it. And it's only federal that taxes corporate income. Federal government will, the FIRS, now the Nigerian Revenue Service, will tax, and they will share between the federal, state, and local government. Same with VAT. Federal is federally collected, but it is distributed to federal, states, and local government areas. Only the states collect the state pay as you earn personal income taxes. Yeah.
Okay, so how important are these taxes? Because you mentioned the non-oil and the oil. Those taxes to the government revenue as of today.
Very important. I saw a report that was talking about the report done by the Nigerian Revenue Service for, I think, for Q1 2026. Already, I think we're down already about 2.7, 2.5 trillion. Why are we down? Because corporate income taxes are down. So already we are seeing, if I'm not, I think the report was saying it's down because with the tax implementation, maybe the back and forth on that has caused the economy. It just shows you how, if a small clink happens, it shows up on tax revenues, right? So again, if you look at the crude oil, just to put it in perspective for you, the crude oil that we get, the revenues we get from crude oil, right, it's not enough to service Nigeria's debt. And that just shows you how low, even though we get trillions, how low our tax collections are. Again, tax to GDP in Nigeria is still very, very low, considering our size and the sophistication of the Nigerian economy. We're not really collecting as much taxes in terms of the breadth that we should be collecting. There's a funny thing with taxes. If you lower the tax rate and increase the base, you get more than when you increase the tax rate and just target a few people. So it's better for you to just say, hey, we're going to have a very, very low tax rate, but more people will pay, than we're going to have a very, very tax high rate, just a few people will pay. So you have to find that sweet spot in whatever country you're in.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, a lot of people are saying that the government now looks more aggressive at the way they are handling the whole digital economy and online businesses, trying to bring them into this. Do you agree? And then, could digital taxation affect, content creators, fintechs, freelancers, online workers, and e-commerce businesses?
Yeah, of course. Those are the guys are going to get very, very surprised in January 2027. Lots of folks are going to get very, very surprised because they can see they're not going to tax your bank accounts, but from your bank account, they can tell the level of economic activity that you are engaged in. So if you're a content creator and you do a YouTube video and YouTube pays you in Naira, it goes to your bank account, it's not taxable, right? It just goes to your bank account. They're not going to tax your bank account, but they can tell that you are possibly making a turnover of X, and then you should then pay tax of Y. That's what they're going to do. So again, it goes back to what I'm saying. If you're making YouTube videos, now go create a company, make those YouTube videos in the company's name, keep your expenses, the cameras you buy, the internet you buy, those are all tax deductible instruments. Even how you invest, if you want to invest and you do collective schemes, you don't pay tax when you get the dividends. If you buy shares individually, you might pay a tax if you cross a threshold. So for all the content creators out there, even gambling, all that is all taxable, anything you do online. So they are linking everything. So I don't think unless you're not going to collect monies from a bank or from an institution, then they won't find out, right? So it's tough to hide revenues. I'll say it's better to have a tax mitigation strategy than try to do a tax evasion strategy. That's going to be your best bet going forward.
Okay, now there's also the issue with trusts. There's trust issue with Nigerians, and there's this disconnect between Nigerians and the government. Now, many Nigerians, they also say that they would be more willing to comply with taxes if they could clearly see the impact on roads. I think one of the times we had a research company come on the show to explain that they went to the field and they put up a poll and they asked questions, and they discovered that the issue is not even the taxes that is coming on, the changes, the reforms and everything. It is majorly on trust, which means that they're not seeing any impact in roads, no impact in the healthcare, no hope yet on the electricity situation, the education, the transportation system, and the security aspect of the whole thing. So what do you think is the real challenge, that is going to happen with Nigerians and the government on this whole tax collection? Is it public trust or accountability? And then can these tax reforms succeed without the government rebuilding public confidence?
Yeah, so trust is earned, right? And there's a big gulf between the taxpayers and the government. The Nigerian population generally do not trust the government to spend the money well. That's why the government is struggling to get people to pay. It's a patriotic thing to pay taxes, but the government hasn't shown discipline in how it spends. So it's running up against a trust deficit. That's a big thing for the government. They have to show workings. That's how I'll put it. They're going to get more money now. For the first time in Nigeria's history, more people are going to pay taxes directly. It's one thing when you don't pay VAT, you don't pay income taxes, that's fine. Going forward, more Nigerians are going to fall under the net. Even taxi drivers are going to start to pay tax. Okada, they're going to pay tax. Content, people that didn't know where the government existed are going to pay taxes. I hope that would cause people to then ask questions. Forget the federal government, forget the state government, the local government that you live in, their councils. They are supposed to clear your drain. They're supposed to manage your primary schools. The local government in charge of the primary schools. So you want to ask questions. Why is the school not fixed? Many local governments in Nigeria, none. gets less than 250 million naira a month. None. So you have to ask questions. What are you doing with the money? Where is the money going to? If you start to ask questions at the local government level, it translates to the federal and even to the state. But most times we're looking at the federal and we ignore the one right in front of us. So yes, trust has got to be earned. And the government, if they can show workings, more people will pay taxes. If they don't show workings and they just spend the money, even with all the enforcement they can, folks are not going to pay taxes. Yeah.
Okay, now, is there any other thing that you'd like to add to the conversation on taxes, or things that you feel like Nigerians should really pay attention to, or maybe something you could, give to the policymakers, people who are at the other end trying to fix those taxes and make it work for Nigeria?
Yeah, there are two things. Number one, for the individual, taxes are not just to raise revenues, it's to direct behavior. The government is telling you as an individual that they want you to save for your pension, they want you to buy life insurance, they want you to buy health insurance, but build a house and all that. So take them up on that offer and do that. The more you do that, the less taxes you pay. Instead of paying taxes, contribute to your retirement savings account. That's what the government wants you to do. So that's on one side. For the government, I think there has to be more communication on what's going to happen going forward. Literally, how will I file? I've seen some states put it out, but Nigerians do not know how to file a tax. I mean, operational, where we've talked about the esoteric, holistic taxes, but how do I file a tax? It needs to be drilled down to the average person to say, go to your state internal revenue service, get a form, pay a form. But all these things have got to be said. Make it common, make it digital, make it simple so everyone can understand. Otherwise, you're going to wake up in January and it's going to be a huge rush and the systems will crash. Nigeria's banking system cannot take a massive upload. We saw that during the Naira change or issue. If you force people to pay taxes from the months of January to March 2027, I can assure you the systems are going to crash. We haven't stress tested them recently, but when we did back then for the Naira crash, they did not hold up. So it's best to do it slowly and get people in, allow people to even pay their taxes now if possible. If I say I earn a fixed amount, can I start to pay quarterly now and not wait till January 2027? All this is what we have to do. The operations is now on. It's no longer a bill, it's now the operational side of it. And it's state by state as well as federal. So the sooner we start, the better. Yeah.
The sooner we start, the better. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Carlo. It was really
Thank
great
you.
to have you here. Now, at the end of the day, tax, or rather taxes, are not just the economic policies on paper. They affect food prices, they affect transportation, the salaries, business survival, investment, and ultimately the daily lives of every Nigerian. But beyond paying taxes, citizens also want transparency, accountability, and visible impacts. And as government continues pushing reforms and widening revenue generation, the real conversation may no longer just be about how much Nigerians are paying, but whether they can truly see where those taxes are going. So thank you so much for joining us on Business Lens today. My name is Divine Alex, and don't forget to stay with Rapid TV. Bye for now.